Does anybody else get that I'm rubber, you're glue kind of schoolyard mentality when they're talking to creationists?
Oh my god, the quarterback is toast!
First and foremost, I would like to clarify that I am not a fucking psychologist. However, the study of psychology is one that fascinates me. I think it has something to do with my infatuation of history, as understanding the mindset of people in that time with their surroundings is entirely important to understanding why they practice what they practiced at that time.
Follow me, camera guy?
For example, you can analyze the ancient Mayans, and it's easy to just say yes, they sacrificed people. But to me, what's more fascinating is why they sacrificed people. They genuinely wanted to appease their multiple gods. Apply the same psychoanalysis to creationists. Of course, it's easy to just conclude that they're batshit crazy, but to me it's a little more fun to find out why, hence this series. Now, quite some time ago, a user here on YouTube by the name of Widgetas first introduced me to a particular psychological study. The study was conducted in 1999 by Dunning-Kruger and David Dunning. Ironically enough, the results of their research is called the Dunning-Kruger effect. To give you a brief summary of what this is all about, I'll read you a tidbit from the Wikipedia article. The Dunning-Kruger effect is a cognitive bias in which unskilled people make poor decisions and reach erroneous conclusions, but their incompetence denies them the metacognitive ability to recognize their mistakes. The unskilled therefore suffer from illusory superiority, rating their ability as above average, much higher than it actually is, while the highly skilled underrate their own abilities, suffering from illusory inferiority. This leads to the situation in which less competent people rate their own ability higher than the more competent people. For a much more clear explanation as to what the fuck I'm talking about, please take the time to pause this video and check out the first link in the description of it. For those of you who have a life and want the short version, it basically means that stupid people have no idea how stupid they actually are. Now, I know this shouldn't really come as a surprise to anyone, but it's definitely a handy thing to keep in mind when you're talking to a creationist. Why is it important to keep this in mind? Because without understanding how and why shit works, you're no better than them. Now, originally when I was going to make this video, it was going to consist of nothing but raw scientific facts. But after getting about halfway through, I realized that the vast majority of my subscription base already know how to conduct research on their own. After all, the motto of my channel is to have fucking fun. And wouldn't you know it, but just about that time, God himself sent me down a nice little personal miracle. Of course, it's not a conclusive miracle like a burning bush or anything like that, but as it turns out, when I wanted to compare the Dunning-Kruger effect to creationists, a persistent example kept showing up in my inbox. Want to hear the juicy details? I'll warn you in advance, it requires a shit ton of reading. This whole endeavor first began when a user by the name of Outside of the Box Thinker sent a PM out to a bunch of people, including myself. To briefly summarize the PM, it was an attempt to kickstart a debate. Now, to be perfectly honest, without going into too much detail, at this point I'd basically come to the conclusion that there's no point in even debating this aspect. Some creationists choose to argue or debate because they actually make money from it, while some others tend to do it because they subconsciously envision themselves in some kind of David and Goliath match. To steal a line from Eddie Murphy, it's sort of like a scrawny Italian walking out of a movie theater after just watching the movie Rocky, and thinking that somehow he has the underdog Hollywood ability to beat up a 400-pound bouncer. Whatever the case, whatever the reason, these alleged debates are definitely going to go down here on YouTube for a long time to come. And while I did try to avoid this one, I felt the need to actually put down why I wanted to avoid this one. The few responses that I did receive from this message were generally positive, including this one here that was actually a response to Out of the Box Thinker and yet still forwarded to me. Although this one hints on the edge that their side is the truth and everything else is a lie, the article was very well written and it seemed to come from an intelligent source. Shortly thereafter, Out of the Box Thinker came back with, shall I say, a direct response. I suppose he wanted to cut right to the chase. I suppose he actually was on a quest for truth. I also suppose that he used so many examples from the Bible to support his case here that I actually need to ramble on here just to allow for enough area to fit all the screenshots. Now, with good intentions, seeing how the debate had been escalated, Forthcoming responded with these two PMs. Now at this point I had been following the discussion. I mean, why not? It's being dumped into my inbox. However, it should come as no surprise that when an atheist sees a title such as "When Atheists Are Angry at God," well, needless to say, such a statement in itself deserves clarification. So after reading the article mentioned in Forthcoming's PM, I personally attempted to analyze this conflict, using the mindset of both an atheistic and a theistic perspective. This PM here was the result of that. In which case I attempted to present just how something can appear offensive when that's not the intention of the person presenting it. So up until this point, all was fine, all was dandy, all was civil. And then I get this response. To basically summarize this response, it pretty much says, if you're honest, you do believe in God. Now, despite being hypothetically told that you're wrong no matter what, I still attempted to exercise what I had preached in my previous messages. However, if you care to continue following this conversation, you'll notice that it gradually but surely took a turn for the worst. Now, with what some would consider to be the patience of a saint, initially I attempted to rationalize with Wake the Oblivious. In which case I attempted to use the Socratic method to give this individual the most benefit of the doubt that I could possibly muster. Basically summarizing, I said none of us know anything and that truth is subjective. At least in my mind that gave his God a fighting chance. But as it turns out, some people aren't happy unless they can convince you that the truth is their perspective. As you might recall at the beginning of this exchange, we were referring to an article entitled, "Why Are Atheists Angry at God?" To those theists out there that are genuinely curious as to why atheists do appear to be angry with God, allow the attached screenshots to give you a vivid explanation as to why we're actually appearing as angry. It's not because we're actually angry at a God that we don't believe in. We're fed up and frustrated with the bullshit that we're presented with by just calling ourselves atheists. For example, Wake the Oblivious here seems to think that an atheist literally means that you're a liar and a Satanist. I mean, honestly, how is one supposed to coexist with such irrational stupidity? However, the messages get even better. Aside from simply demonstrating why atheists can feel segregated and misrepresented, the exchanges become an increasingly perfect example of the Dunning-Kruger effect. Imagine if you're actually able to demonstrate that somebody's lied to you. But instead of acknowledging that they have lied and or made a mistake, they turn around and call you a liar. I'll spare some of you the gory details, but Wake the Oblivious was arguing that medieval medical practices were congruent with today's medical practices. Through a sarcastic response, I suggested bloodletting, among others. You see, bloodletting and blood transfusions are entirely separate things. It's kind of like the difference between a one-way street and a two-way street. And when I pointed this out to Wake the Oblivious, he exemplified the Dunning-Kruger effect to a T. Now, although he had been accusing me of lying the entire time, in his own mind this seemed to somehow solidify his case. Now, some of you may be wondering why I would give the time of day to an idiot like this. And I suppose at this point it's for no other reason than to publicly demonstrate this kind of atrocity to the rest of the world here on YouTube. You see, I'm not deliberately trying to make creationism look bad. The people that seem to represent creationism here on YouTube do its supporters the worst kind of public exposure possible. I don't even need to put on the boxing gloves. All I need to do is use the tools that I was provided with. And luckily for me, all that consists of is an internet connection, some video editing software, and your own wishful thinking smothered material. And that is precisely why I put up with this shit. That's why I spend so much time making videos. Because the more people that actually see these creationists proposing these arguments, the more people are going to know just how batshit fucking cult crazy these Kool-Aid drinkers really are.
I ain't afraid of no ghosts.